Well, they can be tenacious when they want something.
Tell me, are your hemorrhoids particularly large or just tenacious?
Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today because we're doing something a little bit different but honestly incredibly powerful. We're going to perform a complete anatomical dissection of a single, highly sophisticated English word. Because let's face it, when you're learning English or just trying to level up your vocabulary, simply memorizing a list of definitions from a dictionary just doesn't cut it. You really need to understand how a word breathes, how it actually functions in the real world, and the exact flavor it brings to a conversation. So today, we're looking at the anatomy of tenacity, focusing specifically on the word tenacious.
So, what do you actually call someone who just absolutely refuses to quit? I want you to picture this scenario for a second. You've got this massive goal in front of you. Maybe it's mastering the English language. Maybe it's finally landing that huge promotion at work. Or hey, maybe it's finishing a marathon. The wind is blowing right in your face. Obstacles just keep popping up out of nowhere, but you hold on tightly. You absolutely refuse to let go no matter how exhausted you get. That specific kind of unstoppable, admirable determination, well, it needs a name. And that name is the core vocabulary word we are mastering today.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our anatomical lesson plan for today. First, the core meaning. Second, roots and history. Third, relatives and opposites. Fourth, using tenacious naturally. And finally, final thoughts.
Section 1. The core meaning.
Think of this part as the foundational skeleton of our vocabulary word. Before we can run with it, we really have to understand its underlying structure. First up, we have the literal physical meaning, tending to keep a firm hold of something. Imagine a rock climber gripping a tiny, tiny ledge with just their fingertips, or a dog clamping down on its absolute favorite chew toy. That right there is a tenacious grip. But then we have the figurative meaning, and this is how you're going to hear it used like 90% of the time in modern English, not readily relinquishing a position, principle, or course of action. It basically means you do not give up your ideas or your goals easily. Listen closely to how that sounds. Tenacious. 3 syllables, tenacious. It brilliantly illustrates how a purely physical action, literally holding on tightly with your hands, evolves perfectly into this powerful mental characteristic about holding on to your goals. Section 2. Roots and history.
Let's move on and see how this builds. Now that we have the skeleton mapped out, we need to add the muscle. We have to figure out where its undeniable strength actually comes from. Language is this living, breathing thing with a deeply fascinating history. Starting way back in the 1st century BC, our word begins with the ancient Latin root tenere, which literally translates to hold. At that point, it was entirely physical. Fast forward to the 1620s, and we see the very first recorded English adaptation. English speakers took that Latin concept of physically holding on and turned it into an adjective to describe objects that stick together. And finally, in the modern day, it has evolved into something really quite special. It isn't just descriptive anymore, it's used as a powerful, high-level compliment for human behavior. When someone calls you tenacious today, they're recognizing a deep, historically rooted strength in your character.
Section 3. Relatives and opposites.
You know, to truly master a new vocabulary word, you have to do more than just memorize its definition. You have to compare it to its close relatives to really highlight its unique flavor. So let's compare tenacious with a word you probably already know pretty well, stubborn. Now, both words describe someone who refuses to change their mind or stop what they're doing. But here's the catch. Tenacious carries a highly positive connotation. It means persisting in an admirable, determined way. You are fighting for something worthwhile. Stubborn, on the other hand, that carries a pretty negative connotation. It means persisting in a frustrating, completely unreasonable way. You know, like refusing to ask for directions when you are clearly hopelessly lost. So the crucial point is that tenacious is high praise. It's a genuine compliment, whereas stubborn is typically meant as an insult or a sharp criticism.
Section 4. Using tenacious naturally.
Now, what's really interesting here is this movement phase of our anatomy metaphor. We're going to show the word breathing in its natural habitat so you know exactly how to deploy it in your everyday conversations. Native English speakers rely heavily on collocations, which are basically just words that naturally love to live next to each other. Notice how our adjective, tenacious, pairs so perfectly with these common nouns. A tenacious grip, a tenacious spirit, a tenacious defense. Did you catch that rule of 3 rhythm? Grip, spirit, defense? If a sports team absolutely refuses to let the other team score, no matter how exhausted they are, they have a tenacious defense. If someone fights through a severe illness with a smile and a total refusal to quit, They have a tenacious spirit. If you can memorize these specific pairings, you are going to sound incredibly natural and fluent. Let's actually see it in action with a fantastic quote. Success is the child of drudgery and perseverance. You must be tenacious to win. I absolutely love this because it perfectly proves that native speakers really do rely on this exact word to convey powerful, raw determination. It's not just about being naturally smart, and it's definitely not about just getting lucky. Winning requires that deep, holding on power. You absolutely must be tenacious.
Section 5. Final thoughts.
Well, we've covered a whole lot of ground today. We've basically completed our anatomical breakdown of the word, bringing together its skeleton, its muscle, and its movement into one cohesive understanding. You now know its literal Latin roots of physically holding on, its natural rule of three collocations, and its modern figurative power as a massive complement for unstoppable determination. It is literally the absolute opposite of being unreasonably stubborn. By the way, if you want to learn more English words this way, download the TalkWord app and listen to podcast-style explanations of any word. It really is a fantastic tool to empower you to continue your highly structured, focused language learning journey long after this explainer wraps up. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a direct, provocative challenge. What goal in your life requires you to be tenacious today? Because let's be real, language learning itself requires an incredible amount of tenacity. It is not always easy, and yeah, progress can feel pretty slow sometimes. But if you keep a firm hold on your goals, if you refuse to relinquish your course of action, you will absolutely succeed. Think about where you can apply this unstoppable spirit right now in your own personal ambitions. Be tenacious today, my friends. Keep learning, keep pushing, and I will see you on the next explainer.